to see the teddy bear are here to play. If you don't come play with.
Welcome to Frightened Female. This is Crystal. Today's scary story was submitted by Joshua. Thank you very much, Joshua. Now, I've lived around spirits in my past, but never to the gravity of a poltergeist. And for all of those who say ghosts can't harm you, you'd better think again. That's just my advice. With that, let's begin. This actually happened to me when I was very young, between the ages of 4 and 5, so I had little memory of what had occurred in this story while growing up until about 6 years back, and my mother, God rest her soul now, told me exactly the reason why we were forced to up and move out of our home. She wanted to wait till I was old enough to hear the events in detail. So, long story short, my parents divorced very early on, and my father gave over full custody to my mother, and we basically never saw or heard from him again. She didn't want anything to do with the man, but I didn't have a say in anything. My father did, however, leave my mom with the house that they had bought together. But once he was gone, she sold it in an instant, saying as how living there held too many bad memories of their constant fighting. So we moved, just her and I, a few states north to Vermont. We had a budget, but found a very cheap and very old home in a wooded area outside of the city. It was thousands of dollars under budget, and curiously, my mom asked the realtor, "Why is this home so differently priced than the others around it? I don't get it." He went on to explain that the previous tenants left after only 1 month because they claimed it was supposedly haunted, but that the woman who owned it was somewhat schizophrenic and she could have just been seeing things, but that did not faze my mother. She did not believe in spirits or ghosts whatsoever, and she stood by that. This place was a good deal, and she didn't want to pass it up. So we signed the papers and began moving our stuff in the very next day. It was a rather lovely home for being built in the 1930s. It had mostly all wooden floors and updated features, except for a dishwasher. But it had 4 large rooms, and of course we didn't have the furniture to fill them all. But again, we were just thankful to have shelter at a reasonable price. So once we settled in, we headed out to a local secondhand store. My mom was looking for household items, like pictures to fill the wall space, and baskets, dishes, all that. So upon shopping, we came across this big plastic bag of those alphabet letter fridge magnets. She thought they would be fun for me to play with and learn. And as soon as we got back home, I plopped down on the kitchen floor and scrambled the letters all over the fridge. I really didn't know how to spell anything. I just remember liking the colors of them. So my mom quickly started to notice strange occurrences in the home. That again, she never told me about until recently, but I'll share what she said. So one of the first nights, my mother told me that she was going through her makeup drawer in the bathroom and was suddenly thrown back by a tug on her hair. She froze and stood up at the mirror, startled. Within seconds, the hairbrush that sat on the counter next to her flew off violently across the edge and smashed into the wall of the shower. She said that she quickly ran into her bedroom and shut the bathroom door behind her, refusing to go back in, only to turn around and see that her normally made bed was disheveled and thrown apart. And it wasn't me. I'd been long asleep. She told me that she slowly crept through the entire house with a small pair of shears from her other drawer and saw nothing out of place. She was so determined that ghosts didn't exist, and she simply made lame excuses for what she had seen. So I was placed in a preschool slash daycare program during the day while my mom went to her new job as a store clerk at the grocery mart. And she always picked me up a little after 5 o'clock and we would head home. And I'd play while she slaved away at dinner. And now that I look back, I wish she had had a male companion in her life, to make things easier. But anyways, another time, she told me that one early morning, while I was still asleep, she went downstairs to make her normal morning coffee. And as she went to get the cream, she saw the alphabet letter magnets on the fridge, and they spelt out something very scary. She said they spelt, "Behind you." And so she did just that. She looked behind her, facing the cupboards, right as one of the doors swung open and a porcelain dish flew instantly to the floor and smashed everywhere. She said she screamed my name and ran upstairs, flung open my door to wake me, and asked if I was playing a prank on her. Later realizing how crazy it was to accuse a 4-year-old of conspiring tricks, let alone knowing how to spell words, I think she was just panicked and startled. So there was even more activity that I was never aware of in the few months that we stayed there. My mother talked of times where her blankets would be ripped off of her in the middle of the night, and items would be misplaced and found in the most bizarre areas of the house, like her purse being found in the fireplace, our photo albums being left wide open in the hallway. Yet still my mom refused to believe that any entity was possessing this house. Again, I was too young to understand her nervousness, and she wasn't explaining it to me. She said that she was starting to feel a combination of anger and depression on a daily basis. She didn't know why. But it was one final day from hell that drove us out for good. So I do remember being on the couch this one particular night. Mom was in the kitchen, shuffling through some pots and pans, when all of a sudden, she shouted my name sternly, "Joshua!" She marched into the living room and said, "Did you write that on the fridge?" Well, I had no clue what she was even talking about. I was almost 5, but again, I didn't know how to write out words. She grabbed me by the arm and dragged me into the kitchen, and she pointed to the magnets. They wrote the words, "Die now." Then all of a sudden, she just started crying, and I was so confused. I wanted to comfort her. So I went to wrap my arms around her leg, and that's when I noticed blood seeping down her arm onto her sweatpants. "Mommy! Owie! Mommy, are you okay?" She looked down to see 3 long, claw-like bloody scratch marks that were oozing down her forearm with no explanation. She screamed again. But that scream was quickly interrupted as we turned around to see that all 4 burners on the stove were blazing at full blast. The burnt grease on them began smoking violently into the room. "Oh my God!" she screamed as she ran over to shut all the burners off, and then she quickly ran back to pick me up. But she didn't slip. It was as if she was thrown to the ground by an unknown force. "Mommy!" I shouted. She was crying and moaning and struggled to get back up, bleeding more profusely. Next thing I knew, I was in my car seat. And Mom looked over at me and said, "We're getting the hell out of here." And we flew down the road, leaving the house behind us in the rearview mirror. And being so young and not knowing what happened was petrifying sitting in a hotel room. Mom said that later the following day, she called the landlord and told him all of what happened. Probably the same story he had heard from past tenants. Well, she failed to find much history on the place, which was very disappointing. The house was later demolished in the 90s and replaced with rows of newly constructed horse stables. I'm sad to know that I'll never have an answer. She later admitted in her final days that she was a fool for not believing in the supernatural. Damn, I'm glad you guys got out safe. That's a definite scary situation to be in. I know I wouldn't be able to stay. I would have fled just like you guys did. But Joshua, it's funny, after I read your story and I was compiling the video and whatnot, I decided to go on YouTube and just look at different poltergeist stories and footage, because it's something that I haven't researched in a really long time. I used to be really into it, and it kind of sparked more interest for me. And I came across this channel of this man that basically has cameras set up in every room of his house, and they're running 24/7, and he has some pretty intense poltergeist activity. And he's in Australia. And I got to thinking, and this poltergeist, he's violent. This isn't, just opening and closing a door or whatnot. I'm talking trash cans being flown over, food being thrown out of the fridge, and everything just being smashed. Things being thrown at pictures and being smashed, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, how can you live through this? And then all of a sudden, I said to myself, you know what? I kind of, and this might sound crazy, but I kind of have a little bit of sympathy. I look at them as tortured souls, because I see them as being stuck in a realm, and they can't get through to wherever they need to be. Whether it's up or down, I don't know. But I view them as being stuck. And so I couldn't imagine being an angry entity and not knowing exactly what I am or where I'm supposed to be. And so I would want to free the poltergeist versus, just filming him being tortured. I don't know. That's just me. You can give your opinion in the comment field, but it is a real thing. And I've heard of people being harmed by these demonic forces. So for one to say that you can't get hurt by a ghost, I mean, you just do the research and you'll find it yourself. But Joshua, that was a good one. Again, I'm glad you guys are safe. If you guys have a true scary story that you would like to submit to me, see the description box below. Please like and subscribe to my channel. You guys have been great. Most importantly, folks, please be safe. Be aware of your surroundings. And remember to always lock your door. Scare you later.